Okay, it started. Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone on our monthly Metadata Challenge webinar series. We are at number 7 now. Welcome everyone who joined us live and month's topic is the Ontology Repositories and Semantic Artefact Catalogues with OntoPortal Technology, and we are joined with Dr. Clement Jonquet from National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment, and also he is a researcher at Mathematics, Computer and Statistics for Environment and Agronomy in France. He has more than 16 years of experience in ontology development and semantic web technologies. So we will hear a keynote presentation from him on this topic. Before we go into the keynote, briefly the agenda for today's meeting. We're gonna introduce a little bit the Metadata Challenge series webinars to people who are new, why we are doing them. Then we're gonna dive into the keynote, and after which we'll have a short question and answer session, and followed by summary and closing comments by Dr. Sarah Barber. So what are the IEA Wind Task 43 Metadata Challenge series? They're a collaboration program between industry and research, and the main goal of IEA Wind Task 43 is facilitating wind energy digitalization, and you can check out and find more information about the activities of IEA Wind Task 43 on the website. And as a part of IEA Wind Task 43, we are conducting this webinar series. Also as a part of this Metadata Challenge. The Metadata Challenge is has several sub-challenges. Among them are managing metadata and schema, defining schema for data and metadata, doing an overview of existing works in the wind energy community, and last but not least, the politics, longevity, and actually sharing the knowledge with the community and spreading it. So these public webinar series are part of this metadata sub-challenge. So the reason why we are doing this is to answer the question, how do we realize the value of data? And we saw that successful digitalization in the wind energy sector, it's a key driver for reducing cost and risk of the whole wind energy project lifecycle. And the opportunities there include digital twins, predictive maintenance, drones, AI systems, all of which can contribute to reducing maintenance costs and increase amount of energy delivered. So for these solutions, the digital twins and AI systems, we don't just need physics, simulations, or data science analytics. We also need systems that are able to process, interpret, and perform logical operations on the structured data, and a problem that is generally cast as knowledge engineering problem. And also we need lots of structured data to represent the information within our domain. And this is what we usually refer to as a knowledge representation. So in this context, we are looking into improving our understanding of data and of metadata. And the first step in this path is understanding what do all the terms mean. So things like metadata, taxonomies, ontology, schemas. The activities of our Metadata Challenge are focused on delivering that. We are working on the glossary for people to look and review papers, for people to get more into the topic. And the other questions that we need to answer is, what do we need to know to understand data? What has been done so far? And what can we learn from experts who deal with that in their work, knowledge engineers, data models, and data series. And that's where experts like Dr. Clement Jonquet come in as experts in knowledge engineering. Other topics we can look into is what can we learn from other domains. So Dr. Clement Jonquet's focus was on the agriculture domain. So what can we learn from domains like which are a bit ahead of wind energy on creating ontologies, on managing their data and structuring it. So before we dive into the topic, very briefly, I listed a couple of points on importance of ontologies in general. For people not familiar with the topic, I would invite them to get into it. It's a very fascinating topic about what ontologies, what are they used for, but very briefly, it's just an explicit conceptualization, so it's just a way to represent knowledge in a formal way. And why is it important for wind energy is because they provide ways for standardization and interoperability. They provide shared terminologies. They provide possibilities for data integration and linkage. They facilitate the use of diverse data sources, which is extremely important for such a heterogeneous domain and such complex domain with a lot of systems such as wind energy. They bring up the possibility of using of semantic web and machine understandability, readability in general. And all of these, like puzzle pieces, when they fall in place, they provide possibility for developing the systems I talked just in the beginning, the digital twins, the advanced analytics, decision-making, reasoning and inference on structured data. So they are basically building the solid foundation and the backbone of all of these systems. And last not least, ontologies provide enhanced collaboration. They create common language so that we can all talk on the same terms. So with this, I hand it over to Dr. Clement Jonquet and his keynote.
Okie dokie. So I will be sharing my slide, I'm assuming, and it should be okay to do so. Assuming I can share a slide here. Okay. Oh, of course. Oh. Hold on. I'm not using Zoom every day, so I end up with oh, I like that. Okay. I'm gonna come back in 1 second. Just don't go away because I'm running Teams in my browser and it doesn't want me to share the camera without before I'm giving it an access. So give me 1 second and I'll come back.
Were you at the meeting yesterday, Yuri, at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you made a few comments. But you didn't make it.
Not all the way through.
Yeah, I think it was quite hard work towards the end because most of the people were there on Monday and Tuesday as well. So it was lots of thinking.
Hello, I'm back and I should be able to share the screen now. Whew, lucky me. Okay, so let's find the right window to share now. Apologize for that. I needed to restart the browser because it was not. I changed my machine recently and it was not authorized to access the screen. Can you see my slide right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's go on. Sorry again for that. So I've planned something for like a half hour. I can make a little shorter or make a little longer on demand. So you give me a sign and you tell me what you prefer, if you, in case you want me to talk a little longer or a little less, typically on these things. So my name is Clement Jonquet. Thanks for the great introduction, Yuri. I'm working for INRAE. I used to work at University of Montpellier, and indeed, I've been working on knowledge engineering and semantic, and for a bunch of years now, developing ontology repositories. You can see in the title here that I'm also using the expression semantic artifact catalog, and that's an expression we use more and more in the Fair Impact project. I will say a few words about the idea that we can cover with the term semantic artifact more than just ontologies, thesauri, vocabularies, taxonomies. And that notion of semantic artifact catalogs encompasses all of the services or vocabulary servers, ontology lookup service, all of those approach, libraries, registries, terms that are used to identify those services. So I'm going to present how we do that in a couple of projects, and then illustrates the context of the OntoPortal Alliance. So the overview of the talk is the following. I'm giving a few elements on ontology repositories. This is kind of related to the semantic web. Then I'm moving to some projects in ontology-based services in biomedicine and agronomy that originally brought me to work on the OntoPortal Alliance and on the OntoPortal technology that is presented in section after. Say a few words about Fair Impact, the context in which we are pushing that now. And if time on demand, I also included a bunch of slides that I can present or not related to AgroPortal, or that I'm using from time to time to illustrate or give demo about what we can do with the portal. So if we start with a few elements on ontology repositories, that's usually kind of the arguments that I'm making when I want to explain communities that it's important to deal with ontology repositories, because we have several issues with ontologies. They are spread out over the web in different formats, different size, different structure. There are increasing numbers of ontologies, and they are sometimes overlapping one another. We have different representation language to represent them, from RDFS to OWL, but also including SCORS. We need to facilitate the use of those resources. So why ontology repositories are important? They really help when you want to let the world know that you've done an ontology and you want to share it. They also help a lot when you need an ontology and you want to find one. And they will help you also when you want to figure out is an ontology is any good. So by good here, I said that's very relative to a certain use case. But if you want information about an ontology to find out that it's good for your use case, an ontology repository is useful for that. Sometimes it will help you to create link with the data resources that are relevant for your domain, and the domain of the ontology of interest. And overall, you want to use those ontologies and enable new science in your field without having to manage them. And that's really the key idea behind ontology repositories. They are supposed to help you do that by doing an abstraction. So I'm using this slide to explain how making ontology repositories help us take ontologies and semantic artifacts and make those objects, those scientific research objects, as fair objects, as any other data, as any other research object. So the screenshots here are illustrated by AgroPortal, and they show how we can make the resources, the semantic artifact, more findable, more accessible, because we offer APIs, UIs, web service to connect to them, interoperable, because we do connect those semantic artifacts one another, by creating some mappings between them, but also making their metadata more standard, but also reusable, also because we are providing the right information for them and making them available. So really, the big picture, the big vision is really making ontology, developing ontology repositories to help to make ontology fair. And if you know the FAIR principle, you'll know that the interoperability principle calls for using semantic vocabularies, and those vocabularies are themselves to be fair. So if we really want to address the FAIR principle for any data, eventually it goes through addressing the FAIR principle for semantic artifact. So what are the ontology libraries out there? Here I'm using the term library because it's a more generic term to encompass all of those technologies and approach. This slide I've done this slide about a few years ago, and it's not completely up to date, but it contains still a bunch of names and ontology repositories, portal, web indexes that were indexes, portal technologies that can be used, ontology libraries. Typically, we make a difference between a repository that do index the content of ontologies and an ontology library that will only deal with metadata. So that's, for example, the big difference between BioPortal and Fair Sharing. BioPortal is a service to serve ontology inside with parsing the content, dealing with the content, whereas Fair Sharing, for example, has ontologies, but also only a metadata description for those. And those metadata description in Fair Sharing are actually pulled out from BioPortal. So the blue one in these slides are the one in the biomedical domain, because it's always been a domain kind of pushing the development in this activity in this domain. And the one that are framed now are the one that are really made with a technology that can be reused. It should not be actually SysMap, so it should be OntoHub that was made to be reused, but also BioPortal originally, and the EBI ontology lookup service. And at the time I did that slide, it changed a couple of years ago, but at the time I did that slide, BioPortal was the only technology that was reused to develop other portals, and eventually it became OntoPortal. Now EBI has been explicitly reused by a couple of projects in Germany, for example, in the context of NFDI. This is a subject of research too. I mean, I've made my habilitation to direct research about a couple of years. I mean, actually 4 years now. They're talking about the challenge between those ontology repositories. They will go from dealing with metadata evaluation, the selection of those ontologies, dealing with multilinguality, of course, ontology alignment, of course, indexing data, annotating data, and overall scaling and making those objects interoperable. And so I'm just presenting here the manuscript to mention that we can do research in computer science, but by addressing those aspects of working with ontology repositories. So the rest of the talk, I'm presenting those two important use cases that we had originally that make us start working with ontology repositories at University of Montpellier originally, and then eventually at INRAE now. So the very first one is the NCBO BioPortal that was designed about 17 years ago to almost 17, 18 years ago to be a one-stop shop for biomedical ontologists. So at that time, there was really a need. GitHub was not there yet, and using the web was not as easy as today. So there was a need for a one-stop shop, a place where you will put the ontologies, find them, publish them, download them, keep the version. You'll be able to browse them, search them, align them one another, all of that into one place. And BioPortal became that place. It has been a very successful project that has been up for almost 20 years with tons of queries and users every day, from hospitals to research data managers that are using BioPortal on a day-to-day practice. And I like this slide because it usually shows the span of services and things that you can do with the BioPortal original technology. You have those ontology services that are the core of the platform, where you can search, traverse, comment, download ontologies. Those mapping services where that helps you deal with mappings between those ontologies directly inside the portal. Those little widgets that you can use at the UI level to actually connect your BioPortal or your website to BioPortal, doing things like autocomplete search. And when you search for melanoma here, you'll pick up a term in an ontology, and behind the form, what you have is actually a URI. So you go from keywords to URIs by using these kind of widgets. We used to work on the annotation of text data and with a term or concept recognition workflow called the annotator, and we will have eventually use that to access data inside BioPortal. That functionality has been removed since then, but it was there for a long time. And all of that was accessible at the UI level or at the API level. Data.bioontology.org is really the API endpoint, which means that a machine can actually connect to the portal and implement some tools, and you can do things with your software, plugging in, connecting to BioPortal. So the best slide after all this time to illustrate the impact that BioPortal had on what we call the linked data or the semantic web or the linked data approach was really to illustrate the diagram, which shows, I don't know if you're familiar with that, maybe some of you have already seen it. It's really an illustration of the set of link open data sets that are being published online and visualized through this website called loudcloud.net. And eventually in 2013, so after like 8 years of working on BioPortal, then we made it happen, the fact that all of the ontologies in BioPortal joined the cloud, and it switched from the picture upper left side to the big picture in the middle. And we're like looking like, look, all of this linked data online is actually made of a lot of biomedical ontologies, and the impact was illustrated by this picture. Eventually, we start reusing OntoPortal, BioPortal in different domains, and I'm going to illustrate them a little bit. The French Cipher BioPortal, and then eventually Chinese came in, used it also with the same approach of doing a portal in the biomedical domain, but with a focus on Chinese, like we did it with a focus on French. I start working with the Montpellier community that has multiple interests and organizations working in agriculture in AgroPortal at that time, and then other communities joined, like for example LifeWatch, which is the infrastructure in Italy, the European infrastructure hosted in Italy for biodiversity data. So the very first project in which I reused, or I started using the OntoPortal technology was called Semantic Indexing of French Biomedical Data Resources. So it may be something you guys, some of you working in Switzerland, have noticed. We have a lot of biomedical data in French, especially in clinical data or clinical records, and there was no service, no way to actually index those data using biomedical terminologies that would be in English or in French, whatever, but that will actually that will support a workflow that will be open and will help us to actually identify ontology terms inside those data. So that's why we reused the BioPortal technology to build that French annotator, reusing the annotator service that was plugged in or packaged in the OntoPortal technology at that time. So we end up writing a dedicated version of BioPortal to handle French biomedical terminologies. For example, here we had the French version of the medical subject heading that is very much used in the biomedical domain to index publication related to biomedicine. And we propose bioportal.lirmm.fr, and we end up using that Cipher annotator that was customized for dealing with French inside the Cipher BioPortal and we used it in a couple of use cases. It was eventually published and explaining how the service itself helped different users, different use cases in annotating their French biomedical text data using ontologies. This is an illustration. You have a sentence about the melanome here in French, and you will find inside the text the terms explicitly mentioned, and you will map them to ontology concepts, and then return those annotations to the users using the semantics of ontologies, so users can actually start doing things with those semantics. So, for example, if a text will contain the notion of cancer, you'll be able to annotate that with the concept neoplasm, because we know that cancer and neoplasms are synonyms. We eventually moved to another domain. I was at LIRMM. LIRMM was a computer science lab, so we were like working with different actors. And as I said, in Montpellier and in the agri-food community, I found out that there was really a need for a platform, a support, a reference ontology repository with a primary focus on agronomy, plant sciences, food, a little bit of biodiversity at the beginning, but then eventually we passed away to new partners. The key idea was here to reuse the NCBio BioPortal technology. And at the time I did that slide, actually, the name was still not OntoPortal, and we'll have to avoid re-implementing what was done and reuse as much as possible the technology in order to focus on the new needs and the new science that we would like to enable with this community. So we end up releasing OntoPortal, AgroPortal, that will offer the services that the BioPortal will have, but for the agri-food domain. and we start working on new approach, new services, new features that we included now in the CIFER French bioportal and in AgroPortal, and we are participating into that in the OntoPortal initiative. So really, AgroPortal has around 130 ontologies now, even more than that now. I'm quite excited about this slide, because every time I update this slide, I see the numbers of ontologies in the portal growing, and the numbers of candidates that I put on the Google Doc on the side still being the same, showing me that I discover more, I mean, or at least enough, the same numbers of ontology to actually include in the portal eventually, or reach out to users to include them, talking to them, that the numbers of ontologies we actually put in, because actually this is a domain in which there was an important need for hosting and managing ontologies and semantic artifacts. We say that the technology is always in line with the OntoPortal technology. In line means backward compatible, and will always be aligned with the technology that is being provided by Stanford and by the group now being called OntoPortal. But we go at another pace, and we develop new services on our side that the others don't have yet for the moment. And then we've been doing that for a bunch of topics that are summarized on these on this slide. We work on multilingual aspect, on customization of the portal for groups and categories in our field, a new metadata model that is used to describe the ontologies that help us to do fairness assessment of ontologies. We are dealing now with SCOS quite well. We are dealing with a new format for mapping called SSSOM that is becoming a standard for representing mappings. We have improved the annotator in the context of the French bioportal. We have done a lot of things, and we are slowly and step by step providing that to the OntoPortal Alliance. So now I'm going to detail the vision, so that we develop collaboratively and push together in that alliance. So it's not a project, it's not a consortium. We call it an alliance because we don't have an explicit status and explicit funding for the alliance. We do have fundings from our project on our side, but that's really a voluntary work to work together and promote semantic services on top of semantic artifact catalogs for different communities. So the key idea is to synchronize and mutualize our research and development effort. I said research and development because every time we come out to a community, we found out that the research is similar, that the needs are there. We have some like hard questions like ontology alignment, things like that are really there. And that needs to be exchanged with that group, and also development effort, because something that has been made by one portal, most of the feature, I will say 95% of them are totally domain agnostic, and they can be proposed from one community to the other. So here on the picture, you see all of the instances that we have of the OntoPortal technology for the moment. Some of them in the material domain, industry domain. I've mentioned the other ones, but also ecology or the Met portal in China. And we have other installation coming. For example, the NFDI for biodiversity project will do an instance in the context of for biodiversity data and semantics. And for example, in France, the Data Terra research infrastructure in earth sciences will actually provide a tool. And we have exchange with different communities, astronomy recently, or physics in the context of fair impact, energy maybe today, or social sciences also. And even with some companies that are adopting or interested in adopting the technology, because they do develop internally multiple vocabularies and ontologies, and they want a place to actually manage them. So really, we are putting a lot of effort in making OntoPortal a real open source project. What I mean, a real open source project makes a difference between just putting the code online and say, look, guys, it's open source, you can reuse. And there is a big difference between doing that and then adopting an open source posture where you set up everything in a certain way and you accept the contribution from outside. You actually solicitate them, and you develop procedures to deal with them, and you embed and you embark community development inside your project. And that's typically what happened recently. About a couple of years ago, we were still on an approach where each portal will work on its side and will fork the code, and then we'll never go back to a unique piece of code. Now we are addressing a global need like that, working together and using GitHub state-of-the-art workflows to actually manage our data. So the membership has been increasing, and you see the list of the portals with membership teams. But I like the left part of the slide where I actually mentioned that despite those 7 and 2 coming public repositories, there is actually a multiple interested parties that will actually take the technology, reuse it internally for their needs, but without making it a public portal. So, for example, hospital will use that very often, load a few terminologies in the biomedical domain, and eventually annotate some data. Typically, clinical data cannot usually be sent over the network, so they install BioPortal on their side to do that. And so we have every year something like 60 appliances, the technology itself that actually call home by a mechanism that we can track, and we know the technology has been used for a few months, for a few years, a couple of years by some project, and then they move on to something else because their research study is done. The OntoPortal Alliance is a group. We kick off those workshops last year, and we're going to have another one this year. That's really to show that there is a group behind that, and you will get more information if you either go to the website that will give you a description of the product itself that we sell, the OntoPortal that we provide to the community, I will say, because all of that is of course completely free, and the description of the alliance, the members of the group pushing for that. And for those who prefer to read the short papers, then there is a 20-page paper presenting the technology that is being submitted right now, and that will be available soon, I hope. That was to mention support. A lot of groups are like, when I present OntoPortal, I'm like, oh, you guys are supported, and I want to show that we are backed up by our organization, typically INRAE or University of Montpellier or the CNRS or Stanford University are backing up us. LifeWatch, for example, also BioPortal, but we also have project funding coming from a European project like Fair Impact, or national project like D2CAB in France, or even other projects in different places. Well, I just wanted to take a real moment to talk about the Fair Impact project, which is kind of, maybe it's important for some actors in Europe to hear a little bit about that, because that's inside the context of this project that we are now pushing for the development of the adoption of semantic artifacts and semantic artifact catalogs. So, I mean, I know Sarah, you're pretty much aware of Fair Impact, joining the group as a FAIR champions. So, but I like to also say a few words about what we are doing in the War Package 4. So really, we put that in that War Package, which is, for those of you who know the EOSC roadmap, that big European program that planned to do the cloud of services for scientists in the context of open science, then Fair Impact is the only project with a focus in a War Package on metadata and ontologies. And so inside this project, which is a coordinated support action, I mean, those are the key information in one slide, with multiple 28 partners, 10 million euros. We've been starting a year ago. So, and the key idea of Fair Impact is really that your sentence in the bottom, we want to support the implementation of fair enabling practice across scientific communities and across research outputs. The key idea is that we could take things related to FAIR at the core. Fair Impact is really the FAIR principles, and we want to demonstrate that if we can apply the FAIR principle on something in a certain community and then take that and apply it in another community or something, or apply it on another kind of object, then we will be successful. And the research output, the research object that we are studying in our War Package, for the War Package 4, are semantic artifacts or semantic artifact mappings. So we have practical use cases, but that are embedded around those key War Package. You see the War Package 4 that I've already mentioned, but another one, the 6, is focusing on interoperability. Another one is focusing on metrics and fairness assessment in War Package 5. And another one is focusing on connecting and putting together persistent identifiers providers and the coordination of persistent identifiers. So going back to the War Package 4, we really study inside that War Package the development of, we call a framework, but it's more or less a set of tasks where we will describe different multiple aspects related to the development or the life cycle of semantic artifact, from their governance at certain community or project level, their creation being fair by design, their mappings, connecting those vocabularies and semantic artifact one another, then sharing and reusing them through semantic artifact catalogs, and then of course evaluate the level of fairness for those objects, formally speaking. So we provide all of that in the context of the work package 4. And our use cases, taking those enabling a practice across communities. Our communities are agri-food, ecology, biodiversity, earth sciences, astronomy, a little bit of social science also there are present in the work package. And the research objects themselves are semantic artifact research software too. We are working with certain people working on metadata description of research software inside our package, and crosswalks and mappings. Well, that's more or less the summary of the presentation, where I started with that vision that ontology repositories help to make ontology fair, semantic artifact fair. So I've illustrated that with a couple of examples, including the AgroPortal that we are building at INRAE to facilitate the access and the use of semantic artifact and ontologies and vocabularies in agri-food. I've explained the generosity of the technology behind that and the dynamic that we are creating with the OntoPortal Alliance to develop and provide the technology for multiple communities, and how it is being done now, partly in the context of fair impact, raising the question of, is there a possible approach to do that for multiple IOSC communities as a service for IOSC scientists in the future, providing semantic artifact catalogs, semantic artifact services. So that's more or less it, and I will take any question if you want, with pleasure. But so I will stop here. And as I said, I have a bunch of slides related to AgroPortal also afterward that I can use if there are some questions, or if you guys want to learn a little bit about the technical, not the technical, but the features, the things we can do with AgroPortal. So yeah, you tell me.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we should try and see if we've got questions. I've also got quite a few questions, and then if we have more time, we can go into more details about the AgroPortal, or maybe that'll be the answer to some of the questions. If that's okay?
Yeah, that's perfectly okay with me.
I want someone else ask questions. I'll ask mine later.
Let me just.
Julien?
Yeah. In the Wind community, we don't have people that are saying, "Oh, we need ontologies that are managed." We have people that are saying, "What's an ontology?" I mean, how does that compare to these other communities like agriculture? I mean, I feel like I ask the average person in Wind what an ontology is, and they say, "I have no idea." And I sort of feel like that's true in agriculture too, or that's my perception. I'm just wondering, where do you find these motivated people?
Well, that's a good point. Let me try to answer this question taking a two approach. First of all, our mission is also to make those semantic objects a little bit more understandable depending on the level of knowledge and the level of needs of certain community. And the idea of using different terms like semantic artifact is also to say, you might not understand necessarily what's an ontology, but maybe you understand, or we can explain you what's a terminology and it's closer to your needs. And we can show you and demonstrate some of our value added, even if at that, in your mind, in your community, the level of understanding or maturity is lower than that logical semantic level that we have with ontologies. And so that's our part of our mission is to make the step, or you say not as high as it is for the moment. And the other way to answer the question is really also to say we are aware and we know that some domains are not necessarily at the same level in terms of familiarity with semantics, and so typically the OntoPortal illustrate that the fact that the biomedical domain has always been very strong in that, and by its side effect they have convinced biologists, people who are agronomists, environmentalists, and those communities are now quite mature with the adoption of semantics. So it's true that in agriculture, I'll be surprised, but we found a lot of person working in agronomy, agriculture, environmental sciences that actually have already embraced the use of ontologies and semantics. And not necessarily always with OWL, but sometimes with SCOS, that is a standard that is super used in our domain, because they not necessarily need the formal level that OWL will bring them. Our feeling is that in certain use cases, it will start to come up. So it's a little bit of a situation where by presenting those tools, by presenting what other communities are doing, we are also kind of pushing the door to talk to other communities. Look, you know, there are fancy things that you can do with those machines following artificial intelligence approach. We call it a symbolic AI. And there are fancy things that you can do and formalize in your machine if you look a little bit around others, what they have done. So of course, that's also the goal of those meetings, also to demonstrate or show a little bit what has been done, what is possible, and then there will be a motivation internally from communities to actually move on. The workshop that I was in a few minutes ago come from the industry domain, and I was amazed of the effort that those guys put in setting up a European project in which they will actually focus on ontologies and semantics for their domain industry, and so it's a call for scientists in multiple domains to discover what's going on, do a little bit of observation, and then step in the realm, and it will be probably more easier from new domains than from others, I would say, in the past.
Thanks.
So just connected to that question, I said that yesterday we have this IEA Wind Task 43 general meeting, which is basically the people in wind energy who are talking about this sort of thing. And apart from the fact that people are saying, what is an ontology, as Julian correctly said, they're also saying, why do we need an ontology? And I think what you just said, Clement, you saying you demonstrating the need for them in some sort of easy way so that people can actually understand. You were mentioning that, like, do you have material to help us do that? So if we for example, I mean, we were talking just last week about making some sort of video to demonstrate the importance and the application possibilities that ontologies, or even fair ontologies, would bring the community. Do you already have something that the wind energy people might even be able to associate with? Because it's, I mean, if it's, as soon as it's something about digital twin or using measurements to understand the behavior of something, they're going to understand it. Like, do you actually have material available now that we could probably even use?
Well, yeah, it's true that the talk here is also kind of a little bit addressed to a community that say a group that will say, oh, we've understood a little bit what we can do with ontologies, and my slides are not presenting that. I'm not necessarily the person with the best material for that, but we can point out groups and actors that maybe will complete your webinar series in a nice approach that will show you the value added of using ontologies or using semantics in multiple approach. Had a few slides for that, and I will sometime, depending on the crowd, insist on that. But it's true that we typically talk to a community that have figured out that they want to reuse them, or they want to use ontologies, so they come to our portal for that, or they want to discover what they are, or they have done one and they want to share them. So it's true that we, depending on the needs, the message will not be necessarily the same. But in the scientific domain, we've seen a quite important maturity of, I can observe from one group to the other, sometimes people saying like, well, what you guys have done, it's super interesting. Will you be able to apply that? Can we apply that to another domain? And so it's really part of a challenge for groups also to make a step toward those knowledge, to actually reach out more.
So if we wanted to branch off a portal for our needs for things relevant to wind energy. Would you help us? Could you give us some advice on how to do that? Can we talk about that? Maybe not now, but like we actually want to do that. How would you recommend we go ahead?
Can you repeat the very beginning of the question? You said with a group, or with the group, or with a certain set of ontologies, or?
Yeah, I mean, wind energy has got some stuff, some semantic artifacts already, but then none of them are published in any accessible way. And we want to create a portal where first of all, existing semantic artifacts are published, and second of all, to enable the community to then develop new ones in a aligned communal way. And we were thinking of using the OntoPortal to do that. Can you say something about that?
Well, that's typically things that I do, or not all the time, but that I do. Yeah, we're talking with communities and talking about what we are doing and telling us about our experience to support them in that movement. So yes, for sure, that's typically part of the exchange. Fair Impact is also into that. So sorry about I see the chat and I realize you guys might not be eligible for the open calls. But overall, Switzerland can still participate in Horizon Europe, so that can be something. I said Switzerland can participate in Horizon Europe project, so it's something also to note on the side for future iteration. But that's
yeah. No, but it's important actually. So we can and we will, and we are looking for actively looking for parties. We can't lead Horizon projects. So if there's anything going on this topic, we want to take part basically.
And so for the moment, Fair Impact is really doing that in the context of EOSC. EOSC is that huge thing being provided or built by the European Commission for scientists, and all of the data infrastructures, people, I would say data steward, working with data, adopting the FAIR principle, because it's true that the FAIR principle have changed the vision. All of those communities are now realizing they need to address semantics, so they provide different levels of semantic artifacts, whatever they are, but they end up saying, look, now we have one, where do we put it? And then now we have one, now we have two, how do we align them? And those are the challenges that we see raising again, that some domains we had years ago, but now other communities are really.
Yeah.
So this kind of interaction for us can happen in the context of Fair Impact or the OntoPortal Alliance. That will be
Yeah, it's just that we don't have access to Fair Impact, as I said. But just Julian, to your comment, we obviously I didn't mean to say that we didn't have any ontologies published. I don't think I actually said that. I think I said we want to have them aligned and published in the same place, right? I mean, maybe Yuri wants to quickly say something to that. I see Yuri's hands up anyway, so why don't you speak, Yuri?
So I mean, Yuri, you might have a question, but I wanted to mention the Cosmos instance ontology viewer that you send out to me maybe right after our talk or during our talk at RDA. Well, typically communities that sometimes turns themselves towards Cosmos, which is the technology behind your data.windenergy.dtu.dk ontologies thing. I understood those are vocabularies from your community, and that's typically, I mean, when people start using SCOS and provide terminologies in SCOS, they will use Cosmos like that. Then eventually they need to move to another level because they want to deal with mappings, they want to deal with advanced features for their terminologies, like for example the annotator, helping them to annotate data. They want to start to be able to handle semantic resources that will be more formal, like OWL. And so I'm not surprised to see that you guys have used that for certain terminologies and scarce vocabularies, because that's really appropriate. And usually we communities start where they start, and then they discover that then, oh, I would like to formalize that relation now in my semantic resource. And then an expert in ontology will tell you, oh, that relation that you want to represent cannot be formalized in SCOS anymore. You have to go to a more formal language to do that. So it's kind of where we are with with multiple communities, pushing them also to, even if they are not ready to use Protégé and deal with the development of ontologies, because this is a word that is scary, then they will step by step move to a more formal semantics, because they will expect the machine to do things. And yeah, I think Julian, you shared the you did share the link that I was thinking of. Yes, that's the one.
So yeah, thank you, Clement, for answering actually exactly what I was going to answer to Julian. In terms of Cosmos and adopting and proper semantic artifacts, catalogs, which just allow a wide range of possibilities. For example, yeah, adopting more advanced semantics like OWL and so on. My comment is partially, or question is partially linked to the to your comment saying providing each community kind of like the solution they might be interested in. For example, like, oh, for certain communities, the interesting part of semantic artifact courts would be like, oh, just terminology, control vocabularies, and so on. And in the wind energy community, and I think in many engineering communities, there is this whole world of semantic artifacts, which are schemas, and particularly represented by JSON schemas and sometimes YAML schemas. So is there some strategy on including that technology? I know that there are mappings from JSON schema to OWL, because obviously it is possible to represent the JSON schema language using OWL semantics. It's way much more expressive. But in general, other plans on developing some kind of integration with that kind of semantic world?
Well, let me try to be as clear as I can on that. I think the short response will be probably no. There is no roadmap to actually endorse in our software and our the approach that are based on a weaker semantics than under RDF. Let me explain a little bit what I'm meaning here. When you develop schemas in JSON or in XML, I mean, communities have been doing that for almost 30 years. To XML will be 30 years, 25 years old. XML was great to describe your documents, your data, and exchange it. So your system will produce such an XML, another one will handle that XML. But XML was very weak in terms of the semantics of the data being encoded. So XML will guarantee that if you follow certain schema, you'll have your system interoperable. So something get produce something out, and then the others can get the same thing in. But will not give you anymore to help your machine to understand the semantics of what you've put in that XML. And RDF came in the picture to actually do that, to actually add information about those objects that XML start putting in the picture and creating those objects with the notion of IDs being the URIs. And we start being able to add information that the machine can use and standardize that information with RDF and RDFS. And that's exactly the level, the moment where you can enter the parser that we do have in the OntoPortal technology. We handle OWL ontologies, COS vocabularies, RDFS schema, and even things that are developed in OBO, which is a format that was done for developing ontologies before OWL, not before, actually, in parallel of OWL. So the key idea will be more to say to that community working on sometimes super formal schema. No later than yesterday, I was talking with astronomy people in a meeting in Montpellier, and they were showing me a schema that is being made by a NASA-related agency for describing data that is super well formalized, but they have reached with that XML schema the level of things they can say with such an XML document. And so eventually it's part of their job now as a community to say that if they want to do more, if they want to enable more semantics, then they will do their work of getting up the scale in that semantic artifact formalism and complexity. It's true that formality and complexity goes a little bit together, it's true, but they will do the necessary step in order to enter another world. And as soon as you enter that other world where you start for using the semantic web technology to capture your knowledge, then you have a bunch of things that are available. It's been 25 years of semantic web research, working with knowledge graph, producing data, making way more advanced things that we are illustrating with ontologies. So I think it's important also that every communities realize that and start that move.
I'm going to have to stop here. I'm sorry. It's 8 o'clock. I've got another meeting. Probably you have as well. I would love to continue this conversation. Just need to work out how to do it. I really think I would really love to talk to you more. Actually, come on, because we've got some ideas about what we actually want to concretely do on this topic. And as part of IEA Task 43, we've actually got a subtask to think about to develop an ontology portal. So I don't know, maybe you can come along to one of our meetings to talk to us more about it, so we can ask more questions and we can try to get your advice, and you can maybe get involved in a project with us if we get funding. Would you be interested and willing to do that?
Well, you keep me updated, ping me. I will reply with pleasure, and we can for sure keep track. On our side, our Fair Impact or OntoPortal, I can also see a couple of occasions where we try to connect with potentially interested communities, and we can reach out to you in that context. Or typically end of September, we have a meeting in Lecce in Italy with that group that I'm presenting a photo, and we'll have an open session with newcomers or interested parties where you can learn a lot about reusing our technologies. There will be tutorials and things like that, and then yeah, I mean, science.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you could invite us to that would be really interesting as well. So yeah, I have to go, but maybe we can just keep in contact by email.
Reach out to me again on that. We can provide support and help, and with the limit of things we can do like that. But then eventually we'll find new ways of collaborating, for sure.
Great, brilliant. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks,
bye, everyone.
The others want to talk a little bit more. I still have on my side.
Yuri's got a meeting as well because he's in the meeting with me, so he'll be leaving. Bye.
So I understand it's the morning for you, and Yuri, you're in Europe. It's the afternoon for you, huh? So, okay.
Yes.
You keep me in the loop if you need, and I'll be happy to reply or discuss. And we'll probably meet again with Sarah in the context of Fair Impact, I'm assuming.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time for the presentation. It was very interesting, very helpful. I hope we get some more views on the recording too.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.